um, Anthony Brown, who's going to speak to us this morning about art. I think he came to art via the law, but he's covered on all sides. Lovely to have him here, and lovely to have so many of you listening to us this morning. Anthony also curates our shul from the art point of view. So if anybody has any comments or would like something up in the shul, he's the person to speak to. Anthony, over to you.
Just unmute.
And unmute yourself.
That's it.
You all hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for giving up a beautiful morning to come and join me and to listen to me. I've always wanted to do Desert Island Discs. It's always been a wish that I would be invited to do Desert Island Discs. And I thought that when I was got Gillian's invitation, it would be something like Desert Island Discs. And I'd be interviewed and I'd be given a choice of music. But actually, that didn't happen. And this feels a bit more sort of like Alan Bennett's Talking Heads. So I've never talked for sort of 40 minutes before. I've never been allowed to. So here goes. I want to talk to you today about my love of art. And I'd like to think that over the course of many years, through my gallery, through charity work, through curating exhibitions, through putting art in people's houses, that I've managed to bring art into the lives of many people. And I want to bring the joy, the challenge, the stimulation, the fulfillment of art that goes into the lives of people. So what I'm going to try and do today is to do this talk in three parts. The first part is talking about my love of art. Second is how I got it into having a gallery. And the third part is various areas that have particularly interested me. So let me start with art. For me, it's the expression of man's creative genius. It's not decoration, though it can be decorative. It's not an investment, though many can and do make money from it. Art should express something visually that can't be expressed in any other way. So it sort of provides an insight into the soul, or maybe the mind, or into our world, our understanding, maybe any or all of these. A lot of people say to me, they come into the gallery and say, well, I know what I like. Isn't that enough? Well, art is like a language. Artists really, really do, they look at the people before them, the masters before them, the people who precede them. They look at the world around them and they try and say something. So they try and create a language that actually means something, that communicates something. So yes, it's fine to just like art, but actually, is that saying anything? Are you getting anything from the artist? And like any language, you probably need to learn something of it. And then the big thing is art a good investment? And I do get asked this a lot, of course. And the truth is that most of the people who buy good art, they would make a lot more money in their own businesses than buying art. And the second thing is that you buy shares. I mean, companies are there to make a profit, or you buy property because property gives an income, or gold, which is a sort of a substitute for different currencies. So, but what about art? Well, the thing is with art, no really important artist I know ever makes art to make money. They might make art to live, but it's not. So they're not trying to make money from art. I mean, they're not trying to make art which has a value commercially or an investment value. that's not to say that there isn't a market in art, because let's take Van Gogh for example. There are very few Van Goghs, and lots of people who are successful want a Van Gogh. So there is a competition for them, and if you buy art well, then it becomes an asset. So there are these different aspects to it. In my experience, the people who've actually really made money from art are the collectors, because they are the people who've bought because they love and they know the market. It's like any other market. If you know it, then you're more likely to make money than if you don't know it and you just know what you like. So I just want to tell you a story about a collection that I was brought to. And this gentleman had bought a lot of art, and he said, come and come and buy some of my pictures. So I went to his house, and what he'd done is he'd gone to the auction house and bought all the big names, and he bought them at the cheapest price. They were the cheapest. Somebody can't get any sounds. I hope the rest of you can hear. The thing is that what he'd done is he'd gone and he bought all these cheap works. And I went in and I said, you know what? I don't want any of these works. You're best to put them back in auction. But I said, there's a picture over there. I said, what a fantastic picture that is. I'd really like to buy that picture. We can talk about quite a substantial price. He said, I'd never part with that picture. He said, that picture I really love. I'd never part with that one. And that's what I say to people. Your collection should be with things that you'd never part with, because those are the things that people want. See, what good art provides is a deep spiritual, intellectual, visual experience, maybe all or some of these. And it's something that nothing else can. You should, I say to a collector, you should buy well, but the dividend is the enjoyment you get, the appreciation you get from the art, and that's the return. And the rest of it is a bonus ball. I have a client who says to me, he's in a very high-powered job, and he says sometimes I just take a whiskey and I go down and I just sit and I look at my art, and he said it gives me such pleasure, and that's for me what it should be. So I want to move on now to how I got into art. I come from Birmingham. My grandparents were Sheffield. We had absolutely no art in the family, so it was a bit of a strange thing to do. And what happened was my father had a furniture shop, and I loved sales. So I used to go into the furniture shop. I was allowed to go in from the age of 13. I was allowed to go in and sell the coffee tables. So when basically all the other salesmen went and they took the big customers, and if they wanted a coffee table, Anthony come and sell them a coffee table. And I loved it. And I still love sales today. Although more than the sales today, I actually love the purchase. It's the chase of a great painting which really excites me more than anything else. And I love putting on the exhibitions, and I love putting the art in people's house that changes the room and all that. So anyway, let me get back to how I got into it. So as I said, I'm from Birmingham. There was no interest in art, but it was a strange thing. When I was 16, I had a dream. I mean, it was sort of Martin Luther King, but I did. I had a dream I just finished my O-levels, and now GCSEs, and I had this dream, this thought that I wanted to do sculpture. I don't know why I had it, and I went back to school, the start of my A-level year, and I said to the art master, I'd like to start doing sculpture. He said, we don't have a sculpture class. I said, but I'd really like to do sculpture. He says, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll put you in the back of the pottery class, and you can do what you want, and we'll see what happens. So I'd just like to share with you today the results of, if I can. And that was my sculpture from the back of the pottery class. And I think I actually won a prize for that. And it was the only prize I think I ever won at Clifton. But anyway, so that was my start in sculpture. Rodin was my hero. I hope some of you can see the association with Rodin. It's a bit tenuous. But anyway, my father then went to the art master and said, okay, is my son going to make it as an artist? And the art master was very honest, and he said no. So my father wanted to be a lawyer, and he said to me, why don't you go and do law? I had actually very little interest in law. In fact, I had no interest in law, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do. So I went to Manchester, I did law. And then when I was at law college, I saw this article, this amazing article in the Times that talked about 3 art dealers. It was a revelation. I didn't know people could make a living buying and selling art. So I went out and I saw this article, and as luck would have it, through pure nepotism, I managed to get my articles with a firm called Janner's. Lord Janner was the head of the firm, and it was Ruth Morris, Lady Morris, who was kind enough to give me articles. But as luck would have it, they were just moving to the West End. So in my lunch hours, I would go and every lunch hour, I would go down and I'd rush down and look at the galleries, and I'd see an exhibition every lunch hour. And then I found something called art law. And what happened was we went to this little office at the top of the Strand, and there we advised artists. It was a charity, so we advised them on wills, we advised them on copyrights, on contracts, and things like that. And as a result, I got to know lots of artists. Unfortunately, we started to run out of money at art law. So my first, if I can share with you this screen again. Hope you can see that one. Oh, no. Yeah. So sorry about that. Yeah. So my first my first sort of entrepreneurial thing in the art world was to put together this auction to raise money for art law. And I went to all the artists who we'd been giving advice to, and I went to them and I said, would you give a work of art to donate for an auction? It wasn't very common at that time. They were incredibly generous. And I managed to get the Royal Academy of Arts to give us a space. And we had a very successful auction. And we raised money, and art law kept going, and we kept advising artists. When I got to the end of my articles, Janner's, which is the firm, were very generous to me, and they said, look, we'll give you an office in the basement. And there I had 2 phones. I had one phone for my art and another phone for my law. Now, the difficult thing was that neither phone rang very often. I did quite a lot of running around, but I bought some Victorian watercolors for a little frame workshop and things like that. But basically, I was making no money. And I got quite ill. I ended up in hospital. And a great friend of mine visited me at hospital. And he said, look, you cannot continue like this. This is, you've got to choose one or the other. And I said, well, I really want to be an art dealer. He said, okay, I'm going to introduce you to somebody and we're going to try and raise you some money. At that time, Maggie Thatcher had started the business expansion scheme, which was the EIS. It was sort of a way, you could invest in a new company and you got tax relief and you lost the rest of it. That's what happened with most of them. So he introduced me to a person called Peter Leach. Some of you might know him at SHtory Hayward. And I was fortunate because his mother was a very good client of Peter Leach. So he actually saw me and he said to me, look, you are a young lawyer who knows nothing about art, really. Why would anybody want to invest in you? So I sort of agreed with him. He said, look, I think we can do this. He said, but he said, you've got to go out. And he said, you've got to find yourself a chairman. You've got to find yourself a lead investor, a chairman who's well known. He said, you've got to find yourself a lead investor. He said, you've got to find yourself a top firm of lawyers, a stockbroker, a PR company, and some printers. I had no money to pay any of these. And anyway, I won't go into it. It took a year. I finally put the dream team together. If I can, sorry, I'm just going to try and share. No. Oh, that's completely disappeared. So I just wanted to share with you the prospectus that we finally put together. We put together this prospectus with this wonderful lavery on the cover, and we raised the money, which was quite extraordinary, really. And I moved into the gallery, which I still have today, Connaught Brown, and that's really that's the beginning of my story, but the end of it for today. I'd just like to now just go on to some of the projects that have really interested me over the years. And the first is restitution. When I'd been going for a few years, I saw a real problem. People were coming into the gallery very resentful of the Jewish inheritors who were asking for their property back. It was quite a problem because some of the art had been on the market, on the open market, for quite a long time. And what was happening was that people were searching out, people who had absolutely no interest, I mean, often quite removed from the art, were claiming, because it had become very valuable, were now claiming the art. And so what had happened was the Nazis were creating two sets of victims. There was the family from whom the art had been stolen, and then there were people who had innocently bought the work who were now having it taken from them. And I thought, I got friendly with a rabbi called Rabbi Dov Oppenheimer, and who is a brilliant rabbi and lawyer. And we looked at a way through Talmudic law of creating a Beth Din, because in Talmudic law, the relationship between the stolen item and the person who's stolen the stolen item and the person who's claiming it is all taken into account. It's not a sort of winner takes all. And this seemed to me fantastic. And we had a big conference, and Greville Janner chaired it, and everybody who was interested turned up to the conference. And we all agreed it was a good idea. Well, it was a good idea, but the trouble was that the Society of London Art Dealers and the art dealers generally didn't think it was a great idea, because they said, why should Holocaust art be taken as more important than the other stolen art? And then the claimants also weren't very interested, because they said, we want the money, we want all the money. So unfortunately, it was one of my less successful episodes, but it's something that is still very important to me. The second area, which really is a great love of mine, is art education. As you can hear, I wasn't art educated. And it's very important to me that other people are. And there was a wonderful, wonderful educator called Gillian Wolfe. Now, the Dulwich Art Gallery, I don't know, I hope some of you know the Dulwich Art Gallery. It's one of the most fantastic collections of old masters in this country. Well, anyway, she was working at the Dulwich Art Gallery. And what she'd do is she'd bring people, the kids from Southwark, often some of the worst comprehensives in Southwark, and she'd bring them put them in front of these wonderful old master paintings, and she'd bring a storyteller in. And so if it was Rubens's Stamps and Delight or something like that, what she'd do is she'd bring in the storyteller and have all the kids sitting around, and he would bring the painting to life. Or they would have science. They would learn how in the 17th century they made paints and things like that. And what happened was that the kids were bringing back their parents. Anyway, I read again in the Times has a quite an important part for me. Anyway, I read that they were running out of money. So I went back to my formula of art law, and by this time I knew a lot more artists. And I asked almost every major artist in this country to work with a child to produce a work of art, which we would sell. It was fantastic. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. We got great works of art. We raised a lot of money. They used the money to buy a fundraiser, and it's still going today. So, and I carried that on because I was involved for a lot of time in the British Friends of the Art Museums of Israel, and then our own Anita Zabradovich, who was the chairman before me, asked me if I would become chairman. One doesn't really want to be chairman of a charity, but I wanted to bring, the reason that I wanted to do it was I wanted to bring as much of the education to the Israeli children as I'd learned through Gillian in London. Now, they already had very good education, but what I thought was we could raise money, the money that we raised in the UK could go to educational projects. And we directed all our money, and it was fantastic. We got in the very religious kids. We got them in to do a special class. We got broken families in to make art together. We got autistic children in who couldn't express themselves in different ways. We have done the most amazing projects. I'm sure if you go onto the Bafami website, you'll see it. Anyway, I'm glad to say that Wendy Fisher, who took over as chairman from me, continued on this education, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And then now chairmans Poya Zabradovich and Pamela Crystal have also continued in that line, which brings me to my final project that I want to talk to you about, which is the synagogue. So when David Turner approached me, he said to me, would I be chairman of the Arts Committee? And then he said to me, but there is no committee. He said, it's going to be an impossibly difficult task. He said, we've spent the budget and there's no allowance. So he said, I want you to basically find the artists, find the budget, and then we can go forward. I know everybody has a different opinion on art. I mean, and I accepted the challenge only because of my love of the synagogue, my love of art. And I felt it was probably something that I was meant to do. I was helped. We went out and we tried to find as good a committee as we possibly could. So we went out and we asked everybody who had an interest in art who wants to be on the committee. And we got a very, very good committee. Particularly, I mean, everybody's important, but, Helen Benningson and Karen Smith. And and most importantly, Debbie Hatchwell, who has been an extraordinary servant of the synagogue and has a great eye for art. We worked together to try and find the very best artists that we could, the very best art that we could find, and the sponsors to do it. I'm not going to talk, and even in the questions and answers, I don't really want to talk about the individual works today, because there's a lot of people in the synagogue who have absolutely no interest in my story, but are very interested in the art. So I think we should probably do this on another day. But if I can just say that everything we've chosen, every artist, every work of art has been chosen with great care. And we've used our combined experience, love of the synagogue and knowledge of art to try and find the very best that we can. And we wanted to find works that would actually enhance our beautiful synagogue. So we add sort of to pleasure and the interest of the experience of coming to synagogue. Now, many people won't appreciate every work, but I hope that in the end people will find interest and fulfillment in what we've added. So I hope that was of some interest. I hope you followed it through. If there are any questions, I don't know whether we've already run out of time, Gillian, or whether people can ask some questions.
No, we have plenty of questions.
Okay. I don't know how it works with the questions. Does how?
If you have a question, can you put your hand up and I'll maybe choose you. Eddie, I think you have a
yeah,
question.
it's me, Gillian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. Anthony, thank you for that wonderful presentation. We are very interested in your life as well as the art, but certainly do another session on art. That would be great. I've studied history of art quite a lot. It's a great love of mine. And I once thought perhaps I could invest in a work of art by a famous man, because the bank doesn't give you very much return.
Yeah.
So I very innocently went to an auction of Sotheby's at the Hilton Hotel in Tel Aviv. And I saw two small Renoirs. And they weren't, horrifically expensive. So I thought, good, maybe I'll invest in one of them. And they look very similar, a close-up portrait of a woman, slightly disheveled. And I think one was of two women. This was a long time ago. And basically, this is very interesting. I went for the one that I don't know why I went for one rather than the other. Sorry, I can't remember. But basically, the one that I like, it was supposed to be an investment, and nobody bid for it. And the extraordinary thing, the other Renoir, I thought it's the name that counts, very similar to the one I bid for, about 80 people bid for. So obviously it's not the name. So I didn't know, I can't understand why it happened the way it did. Two similar paintings by the same.
Well, I don't like you, sir.
Sorry?
Harry or Denise.
She's accidentally on mute.
Did you hear me, Anthony?
Yes, I did. Sorry, I think we probably need to mute everybody else apart from the talker. Yes, I did, absolutely. I can't, without seeing the painting, I can't.
You have to unmute yourself again, Anthony.
Anthony, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I've done it. Sorry, I can't comment on an individual work without seeing it and without seeing the other work. I mean, yes, there are. It goes back to what I said. If people want to buy works of art, it's best to learn about the works before buying. It's a language. Renoir had a language. Renoir was one of our greatest artists of the late 19th, early 20th century. He moved from Impressionism to later on into a more classical language, and he's a fascinating and brilliant artist. But without knowing, without knowing anything about the art, it's very difficult, difficult to comment. And I think that's probably what everybody should do, rather than just walk in and just say, I'll buy this by a famous artist. Is learn about that artist, learn which the important pieces are, learn also about the authenticity. Who is the expert on it, who writes the catalog, what is the provenance of it. These are all very important things.
Yes, I've learned that.
Okay, who else is there?
Any other questions? Put your hand up if you have a question, please, and then unmute yourself. Yeah. Ruth,
Unmute.
unmute yourself, please.
Yes, I was wondering, you were talking about the works that were stolen by the Nazis. How did they put them back onto the market so that people didn't realize that how did they enter to be available to be bought?
Oh, am I unmuted? Yes. The Nazis actually put them into auction themselves. Interesting enough, there was an auction house in Switzerland called Fischer's, where the Nazis actually sold the art. The other thing is that they put them into a lot of German museums. So you'll see that a lot of the works which come back to the market are in German, from German and Austrian museums. So, and the other thing is that a number of the generals were, very passionate about art and big collectors, and they put together their collections and sold them. So, and then there's other art which was actually, from the big collections. It was bought very, very cheaply. I mean, people were removed from their houses and had to sell it very cheaply, and that is considered stolen art.
But I was just thinking about the issue of provenance, which you mentioned. When you buy a work of art, provenance is an important consideration. So,
Yes.
yeah, if it came through the museums, then I can understand how that might be. But would people not look back to,
Well,
different?
yeah. So what's happened is more and more information has become available about provenance. The records of these Germans have been opened up, but what I was talking about was some people have been looking for their art for the whole of their lives, and then their families have continued to be. Others, they might have known that they got art, but they had very little interest in it. And the art had been sold at auction. It was known, the provenance was known of it. It had been sold at auction and things like that. And nobody showed an interest until it became very valuable. And that was causing a big problem, is causing a big problem.
Okay, thank you.
Anthony,
Yes, sorry. Yes.
do you actually go around auctions around the world buying stuff for your gallery?
Oh, yes. I mean, we buy from everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. So we buy from collections, we buy from other dealers. If we see a work with another dealer and we think it's underpriced for whatever reason, or that we have a better market than they have for that painting, or we buy from auctions all over the world. We just, I mean, it's great fun. It's like one big shopping trip, really, for my favorite things.
It's a supplementary question. If you loan a picture to a museum, do the museum have to insure it, or do you do that?
Usually there's a contract. Sometimes some collectors prefer to use their own insurance policy, because what happens if you use the museum insurance policy, then sometimes if there's damage, there's a big argument. Whereas a lot of big collectors have their own insurance policy, and then they know if there's a problem, the insurers will just pay out straight away because they know the insurer. Yeah.
What?
Can I ask you a quite different question?
Yes, please.
Did you keep up your sculpture? And if not, why not?
I didn't. That's a very good question. I didn't actually keep up my sculpture. I tried to do it actually at university, and there was nowhere to do it. I then, when I came to London, I did a night class, and I did some sculpture in a night class at which I enjoyed very much. But I quickly realised that actually my art master was right. I wasn't good enough. By that time, I was going to quite a lot of. I was buying a lot of quite good art, and I realised that I wasn't good enough. And the other thing is, I wasn't passionate enough. The thing is, to be an artist, you have to be. One of my artists said to me, and who's a very brilliant man, he said to me, to be an artist, it has to be so important to you. It's like breathing. That's the creative spirit has to be in you. That it's so important that you can't do anything else except for create art. Nothing else matters in life. And the truth was that I enjoyed it, but I wasn't passionate enough to. It wasn't more important than breathing to me.
David, do you or Honey?
Honey wanted to say something.
Could you tell me the website that you mentioned, Art for Autistic Children, that Wendy Fisher is involved in? Do you have
Yes, the British Friends of the Art Museums of Israel, BAFAMI.
All right. Thank you.
We keep meeting you at different places, don't we?
Caroline.
Hi, Anthony. Just to
Hi.
say, I'm delighted that you're working with, or you work with children who are autistic, because they've got so many good things to communicate, and it is a lifeline that you're throwing to them. But I do have a question, which I hope you can help me with. The first one is, there will be a date when you can no longer bring Nazis to trial. I don't know whether that's ever happened in Austria, and will the same apply to paintings when they will no longer be available, or one can make a claim for them?
Well, there's two sides to that, interestingly, and because and unfortunately, this refers back to what I was saying before about the problems which is being used by both sides. So there will be a time limit. The trouble is that nobody will buy a picture with a problem. So what happens is, even if you can no longer bring a legal case, most dealers, most respectable dealers, and certainly all museums will not buy a picture if it's stolen, because they just don't want it. And most dealers, whether they believe in sort of it was stolen or not, they will they won't be able to sell it, because the collectors won't buy it from them. So it's got a black mark on it. Now the trouble is that this black mark is being used by certain people who had very big collections. So if you take let's take the Renoir. You take a Renoir, and it has a bit of an issue with the provenance during the war years. But we know who had it beforehand. We don't know whether it was legitimately sold or not legitimately sold, and often even if it was legitimately sold and we're not quite sure about it, some estates are asking for money to make the painting kosher. So it's a problem on both sides.
Lawrence, question.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you very much. It was a wonderful My Story presentation. I know you didn't want to talk about the art in the shawl, but can you tell me, are all the pieces of art in the shawl, the paintings, are they permanent, or are they going to be replaced and new things coming in? And what about having sort of small exhibitions to encourage people to come in and, you know, during the week to come into the shawl and look and you know, sort of educate us
Well,
who don't know too much about art?
sure. Okay, there's a couple of points on that. I don't know. It's been hard enough to get the art in. So whether we'll change it round at any time, I can't really quite answer that. But what I can answer is about the exhibitions, because a lot of people have said this. The trouble is that putting on an exhibition in a public space, whatever that public space, has lots of issues. First of all, somebody has to pay for it. So somebody has to pay to bring the work in. You know, you need a transporter or whatever to bring the work in. Somebody has to hang it. Somebody has to unhang it. Somebody has to be responsible for the insurance of it. Somebody has to find the artist to bring it in and to hang it. There's somebody has to work on the schedule. It's a very big job, and it's quite a lot of money involved. You can imagine, you know, you ask an artist to bring it in, and let's say, you know, a number of the paintings are damaged. What's going to happen about those paintings? It's not. It's a lovely idea, but it's not straightforward as to how we would do that. You know, as soon as you start putting on an exhibition, that there are issues, and we haven't resolved that. And every time somebody says that they want to do it, and I tell them the issues, they walk away. So I'm yet to find anybody who wants to take on the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
Charles,
Good morning. That was a great talk.
Thank
Very
you.
much enjoyed it. Can you tell us something about the requirement? I think it's a relatively recent requirement that if you resell a picture that you have bought, that the artist gets part of the proceeds.
Yes, this is quite an interesting thing. This is called droit de suite, or artist resale rights. It was invented by the French because at the turn of the century, what happened was the artists often left their widows in deep poverty, and all they had was a number of paintings. The artist had often sold all his best paintings, so they were left with a pile of paintings which they, you know, couldn't sell, or no paintings at all. And the thought was that the paintings might have gone up very much in value, and therefore why shouldn't the widow participate in getting some money from this, which was a very good thing. The trouble was that the art market has now moved on, and the thing is, the painting isn't sold once; it's often sold many times, and it's a bit of a problem. It's become a bit of a problem because we've got a 19th century rule to a 21st century market. However, you asked the question, so each time a painting is sold, the 4% of the gross price, not the profit, the gross price, goes up to 13,000 euros, goes to the artist.
is that a lot?
It's the life and 70 years. So, because of course they were trying to protect the widow. That was the idea. Now, the thing is, as I've said, artist prices go up and down. So if your art has gone down, you still have to pay the droit de suite. And as the artist got, and if if there's a very small profit in it, then the droit de suite might be all the profit. On the other hand, it might, you might have bought it for nothing and now it's worth millions. And it's totally unfair that the artist shouldn't participate in it. So again, it's a complicated issue and probably one that should be looked at again in the 21st century scenario.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Now, can art
Caroline,
not be
Caroline iPad.
can a law not be deleted?
Hi, Anthony.
Hi.
Graham's friend.
Yes.
Just unsure. A couple of, someone said about tours of the art. Would it be possible to put the artwork online so that we can see it?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that when the artwork is up, or we have all the artwork. I hope maybe it's a very good idea. I mean, because I'd like to push explanations on why we've chosen about the artist, why we've chosen this artist, what the art means to that artist. I mean, each artist, and as I say, we've chosen each artist very carefully and each artwork very carefully, and each of them, I'm sure, would value talking about it. So it's a really good idea. We could put the works online with the explanation. Okay. That's great.
Okay, you can have that one for free.
Thank you very much.
Another quick. It wasn't my original question. I was brought up surrounded by fantastic art. In fact, my great grandparents one of the pieces now in the Glasgow Art Gallery. It was the Sicket of the Dancing Girls.
Wow, lovely.
Yes, it wasn't inherited down the right
down the right line.
So, and I've grown up with a huge love of art, but without the income. But what I do, I have a lot of signed lithographs and prints of my favourite artists, Anthony Gormley. I've got a Hockney. You can probably see that Elizabeth Frink behind me. Mm-hmm. But if money was no object, or you could be given a gift of any painting in the world, which one would it be?
It's the thing is, I love so many works. I mean, it is a problem. I mean, it's a bit like you've got a number of children, and you've got to save one of them. Which do you save? I mean,
it's like the desert island.
Yes, that's right.
That you'd save.
Yes. I don't know which.
Don't know. Okay.
Rubens and Rothko are two artists who move me probably more than any other.
Oh, that's opposite ends of the scale.
Yeah, but both are very, very emotional artists, yeah. and I think it's the emotion that actually, at the end of the day, took me into art. And
Rothko.
Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony, are you actually open to suggestion? Your committee, if people had something or are interested in something in particular, to maybe donate to the show?
Yes, I mean, what we've tried to do, absolutely, and people, all the work we've got, by the way, has been donated. So so we are very open to it. What we've tried to do is, if you go back to my story of the very best thing in your collection, that's the one we want. So what people sometimes give are the things that maybe aren't the very best. But if somebody wants to give, and they want to give their sicket, to go back to Caroline's, if they want to give their sicket of the Dancing Girls, then the thing that they want to be parted with, and the most important thing to them, that's probably the one we want.
And people can.
They can definitely contact. They're very welcome to contact me and say that. But that is what we're trying to get. With each work, that it is something which is meaningful. So absolutely.
People can presumably bequeath things for after their demise.
Yes, I think that Shlomo has various. There are things as well that haven't. We have to be a bit careful about. Um, the work as well. It has to be right for the synagogue.
I can take one more question. Do you have any more questions? Stephen Lawson.
Hi, Anthony. It was a really interesting talk. Can you tell me a bit more about how to look into the art loss register, the Nazi register?
Yes, I mean, if you go on, there's a lot of stuff online, Stephen. A lot.
Yeah.
If you go into just Nazi stolen art, and there's
Right.
there's a number of registers which are being put together now,
Right.
where you can look at these things, and people are doing some very interesting studies on the work and where they are and what the collections and how the Nazis systematically stole it.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about a certain painting, and I asked the dealer if it was on this register. So I've been trying to. He's doing a search.
Yes. Well, yes.
Yeah.
There is a company called the Art Loss Register,
Right.
which
you have to pay for that.
You do have to pay for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll let him do the pay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let him pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anthony, thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk this morning, very different to many of the ones that we've had, but still fascinating. Thank you for your hard work, and thank you for enlightening our day.
Pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.